machines an existential threat to humanity? Elon Musk thinks so, as do Bill Gates and Stephen Hawking. Still, the tech seems to be a long way away. In this panel, we will look at the technical issues that may mean that the threat of a robo-apocalypse is really empty.
Can we start just to get a sense of the room? How many of you think that AI is an actual existential threat to humanity?
Eventually, yes.
Okay.
Not tomorrow.
Is there a choice where everything can be a threat to humanity?
Yes, I agree.
Let's be honest.
I think it
depending
depends how you
on
define
you can
humanity.
make cheese into a threat to humanity. So
Oh,
Yes.
oh, but it would be a good way for humanity to go. Death by cheese. How many people don't believe it's an
With wine,
existential
yeah.
threat? Okay.
I'm on the fence. I don't know how many people are on the fence.
Which is fair, and I think one of the there are some extra chairs in the back if you want to pull a couple off. I think one of the sort of ambiguities of the panel description is just how long the timeline we're talking about.
Yeah.
Although, you know, if you're already familiar with the work of Roger Penrose, Roger Penrose is a mathematician, and he is adamant that machines will never have any kind of intelligence. I must admit, I've only gotten through about 3/4 of both of his books on the subject, and at that point he gets into mathematics that's so abstruse that I'm not sure even he understands it. But there is an argument to be made that, no, it may never be a threat.
Well,
artificial intelligence may never develop far enough. But
it varies on exactly what you want to define as artificial intelligence, too. If you take, let's say you grow that of brain cells and link that to cyber intelligence that handles memory and enhancement and so forth, is it still an artificial intelligence? It's organically based, but it is ultimately artificial. Could you take a dog, let's say, a dog, and put RAM chip expansions that would increase its memory capacity and its analytical abilities, and still have the dog as the driver, and have ultimately Professor Peabody? How many people did I lose with that one?
That would be good because dogs like humans, as everybody knows. You see. So that would look
there'd be no threat.
Yeah.
Well, what you're talking about, though, I think of as cyborgs. When I think of artificial intelligence, I think of straight machine intelligence.
Okay.
It's
Again,
important to make those distinctions, otherwise we don't know what we're talking about, right?
True. I think that. Oh,
And then why do you think that it couldn't?
Oh, I think Roger Penrose doesn't think that could happen. I'm kind of on the fence as well, although if it's going to happen, it's not going to happen soon. I used to, as some of you may know, I used to teach a course in new media at Ryerson, and we looked at the history of artificial intelligence. And one of the things you find about the actual what's going on in the field as opposed to what's going on in science fiction is that since about the 1950s, the scientists have been promising that we'll have fully functional, fully autonomous AI within a decade. And every time it doesn't happen, they just push it back another decade. This has been going on for 60 years now, almost 70 years now. And we're still no closer, really. Well, no, I shouldn't say no closer, but we're still very, very far away from a fully autonomous artificial intelligence.
So I've met a professor who says whenever you hear someone say this technology is about 10 years out, it means it's not in the foreseeable future, like they have no idea when it could ever happen.
the problem with artificial intelligence, and the reason I think it is something of a threat, probably towards the end of my career incarnation. So, give it 30, 40 years, depending on how lucky I am. But the only real distinction I see between what we have as machine intelligence now and organic intelligence is the concept of mating. Because machines are strictly binary. Currently, computers are strictly yes or no. Circuit open, circuit closed. Once you maneuver that into the thing where you start getting that fuzzy area of might be open, might be closed, yeah, it might be yes, it might be no, you start to mimic far more closely the action of the brain cell. Because the brain cell can send out over several dendrites to the ones around it and form complex patterns. And a brain cell can send a varying charge down any of these interconnecting dendrites. That is the maybe yes, maybe no. So once you get that maybe in there at the basic level of the circuitry, then you can start building things that really start to mimic a functional brain.
Well, you've hit the nail right on the head there. The main stumbling block with AI research has been for a long time that rules-based programming is very bad at parsing the real world, because the real world has too much ambiguity in it. Things are not black and white and or 1, 0 in the real world. We're taught from birth, human beings are taught from birth how to negotiate ambiguity.
That's an interesting observation. I think on the face of it, I would agree with you. But at another level, it's kind of, I hear what you're saying, kind of like the way I watch a screen. Ultimately, what I see on a screen, whether it's a computer and so on, is a picture and moving images or what have you. But if I get close enough, then what I actually see are pinpoints of varying color and light. It seems to be possible, and I could be wrong on this, but if what ambiguity ultimately is a series of yeses and nos, this or that, combined together that add up to something less than either two extremes. So if you were to look closely enough, you'd say, okay, there's a bunch of 55 yeses and 56 no's, so we have ambiguity. Anyway, just throw that out there.
Well, let me give you the perfect example of this. Right? Language. Computers have a hellishly difficult time understanding language because most words in the English language have more than one meaning, and we understand them in the context of the other words that surround them. But also, right, in conversation here, we intuitively know how to read people's body posture, we intuitively know how to read the tone of voice that they use, whether they're making eye contact or they're looking away. I mean, there's so many cues that we take for granted in the communication process that all would have to be coded into a program to make a computer understand and react in a normal way with human beings.
I guess what I'm
Also,
suggesting is that's actually what's coded into a person who grows up. And they eventually learn how to parse all of those. But ultimately, in your language example, there is a correct use of the word, and it can list all these different things. In the context of a wider sense of correct usages, you come to appreciate it. But this one time, it can be so.
But with language, we are constantly adapting to the language that we hear. You know, if I go, "Oh my boy, this is a mackerel snack of a good time." Okay, you probably got the idea that it's a great time. I'm having a good time. It's not for the mackerel, obviously. East Coast parents. But we're constantly adapting on the fly to this. And if you want to get that sort of nebulous if then with the computer, that has to be pre-programmed in. And once once they get to the point that they start programming themselves, then you can start to get that adaptive thing. But then the programming makes up for the hardware deficiency. Yes?
I think actually that ambiguity actually is why we're having this question in the first place. I like the question. Sorry. Because there's too many, once we get robots thinking like humans, there's too many different ways that could happen. Yes, it could happen like Age of Ultron where, oh, you want peace on our lifetime? Well, all of humanity has to die. You could get the reverse where humanity's stupid, I'm going to go and do elsewhere. And then you could get, I totally think I'm a human, what do you mean I'm a robot? There's way too many possibilities.
Well, that's the thing. And whenever you're not talking about the future, you roll the dice and take your chances.
Yeah, one of the things, Because there are a couple of things that I want to point out. Everybody's familiar with the Turing Test, I assume? Okay, so the thing about the Turing Test, which is important to understand, is that the Turing Test does not actually pass any judgment on what's going on inside the machine. All it says is if it looks like a human and acts like a human, it's got intelligence like a human. And the reason for that is not necessarily because they couldn't define machine intelligence. The reason is because we still can't really define human intelligence. And you might actually be correct. Human brains might work the same as computers. It's just the firing of neurons, on-offs, ones and zeros. We're just much more complex than the normal computer is. Okay? In which case, it may only be a matter of time before computers get complex enough that they develop consciousness. Emergent properties, thank you. Everybody familiar with the theory of emergent properties? Okay, so the theory of emergent properties, and I'm simplifying for time and also because I'm simple, is that if something is growing, it's getting more and more complex over time. At some point, the complexity will turn the thing into something other than the sum of its parts. This is part of complexity theory, which is an offshoot of chaos theory. But the basic idea is kind of, it explains a lot. It explains, for instance, where you get life from no life. Right? If the molecules get complicated enough, then something that we call life emerges out of them. It also could explain intelligence. Right? Why are we conscious and other animals conscious in ways that other animals are not? Why are we self-conscious, sort of, aware of our own existence?
I would argue that, at least if you're talking mammals, you're talking certain degrees of self-consciousness.
Yep.
And if you're talking higher order animals, I would argue that they are self-conscious.
Well,
It's
the idea is that the brain got big enough that it became self-aware. And you're right, it may have been in higher mammals. I'm not saying that we're unique in that regard, but my point is not that. My point is that you take this idea of emergent properties and you look at Moore's law and how complicated computers have gotten and still have room to get. And it's theoretically possible that self-awareness will become an emergent property of AIs.
based on that, though, it's also possible that the internet already has a measure of self-awareness,
Well, I wanted to...
which the number of times it's locked down. I think it has, and it doesn't like me.
I wanted to write a short story. So how are we going to recognize when a computer becomes self-aware? I wanted to write a short story where people were driving towards a traffic light, were having epileptic seizures. And they figured out eventually that the reason they were having epileptic seizures was because an AI had taken control of the traffic light, and it was trying to communicate with people outside of itself using a code that blinked at the rate of a computer, which is of course much faster than human thought, right, or human perception. And it leads to a fascinating question that I do hope we'll deal with at some point, which is, yes, why is it that we assume that artificial intelligence would be a negative factor in the world? There are three general ways that AI can go, and they're all pretty much represented in popular media. There's the AI that's going to annihilate humanity, Skynet, and all of those types. And I think we've seen that so much that that's kind of ingrained in a lot of people's consciousness. There's the AI that helps humanity, right? R2-D2 and C-3PO from Star Wars.
Who are effectively slaves. That's how it happens.
But they're okay with their slavery, right? It's not like they want to rebel against this. But there's a third possibility, which I think is the most interesting one, and that is that AI won't have an opinion on humanity either way. See, the problem with both of those first two scenarios is that we're positing AI in terms of what it will mean to us. Right? But AI could have its own agenda that has nothing to do with us. And there's actually a really good example of this. Sladek has a couple of books with a hero named Roderick. And he starts off, they're, among other things, social satire. So he starts off as this little Roomba-like robot and goes to school, and everybody treats him like a little boy, even though clearly he's not. But he learns and evolves, and he tries to figure out humanity. They're kind of all around him, and they're a puzzle to him. But he also tries to figure out, basically what his purpose in life is, which I think all of us as human beings do, right? Why is he there? Why was he created? Very different view of what AI could be that isn't human-centric.
Well, speaking of AI agendas, there's a old story that I'd like to tell you. The scientists all got together and created a computer, and they put all the sum total of knowledge and wisdom into the computer, all of the information they could find, everything that was known. And then they asked it the ultimate question, and they said to this computer, "Is there a God?" To which the computer replied, "There is now." But I also see that of, suppose the AI comes along and not necessarily malignantly disposed towards us, but it just views us much in the same way that we view ants, or if we're lucky, house cats. And it's just, yes, nice little human. Oh, isn't that sweet? You've made a fusion reactor. I've got one that's 10 times the size. That's a very good drop. That's another version.
Okay, there was somebody over there. You've been very patient. You've had your hand up for a while. Do you remember what you wanted to say?
Okay, I was just wondering if the problem is that we insist on defining intelligence exclusively in terms of human intelligence. Vance DeWalls, the primatologist, came up with a fascinating new book. The title is "Are We Smart Enough to Know How Smart Animals Are?" The argument basically is that we use human as sort of the yardstick against we measure all other kinds of intelligence, including animal intelligence and presumably artificial intelligence.
And it's very humbling too. Oh my God, we're not masters of chess anymore. Oh my God, we don't necessarily win in Jeopardy against computers. I mean, there are all sorts of examples where computers are faster and smarter than we are. Oops.
Yeah, well, currently, it's just the fact that it's easy to throw them a curveball because they do not deal outside the parameters. One of the reasons that I'm not big on video games, even the role-playing ones, and I do like role-playing gaming, is you can only solve a problem in the preset solutions that are laid down.
It depends on the game. Some games have multiple endings that you can.
Yeah, but you're still limited to what the
Absolutely.
programmer has laid down, and that's the thing with computers. It's currently limited by the programming. But if, as we mentioned earlier, if they start to become self-programming, then we're into real problems.
Well, there are a couple of, and I wanted to bring this up, there are a couple of areas of AI research that may be promising. One was fuzzy logic, and fuzzy logic is essentially trying to get away from the binaries. So it's something which can actually now be realized with quantum computers. Is everybody familiar with quantum computers? Okay, so quantum computers, okay, so with normal computers you are on or off, one or two. With quantum computers you can actually have 3 or more states. You're not limited to the 2.
Look at the lady.
Exactly.
I'm not sure what the third state would be. Are there any?
Well, are you
It's
familiar
actually-
with
You can actually do a continuum of states.
Are you familiar with quantum mechanics?
I would never consider myself somebody who has a good grasp.
Okay. Well, I mean, the basic concept is really simple. You have an atom and it's traveling, or a subatomic particle, and it's traveling in space. You can determine where it is or how fast it's going, or its direction. Direction and speed are the 2 variables. But in making that determination, you change the other variable. So strictly speaking, with our current level of technology, we cannot know anything about the atoms that we're studying. because we change them in the way we look at them. Okay? Now, before we look at them, we can determine, theoretically, a group of paths and a group of speeds that they're going. This is Schrodinger's famous cat experiment. We can know that the cat is either alive or dead. We can know that the atom is either here, 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 or here, and going at speeds x, y, z. Until we actually look at it. Then all of the possibilities kind of collapse into what we see. So the thing about quantum computing is we can keep all those balls up, and we can keep that thing going, and that may be the fuzziness that might allow for computers to be to become sentient. The other possibility, but to be honest with you, I haven't heard anything from the field of fuzzy logic in a long time. I think it's petered out. Where the big excitement is coming from now is in neural nets. And what this is programs that learn. What you would have to do is start a program with some very, very basic functions, and then let it learn for 20 or 30 years, and see if maybe you could get sentience out of that.
I don't remember the name of the computer because it's one of those that has a name, but it's the language one where it started learning how to swear. Because it went on Urban Dictionary and they had to remove all of Urban Dictionary.
Oh,
There was
the
a
one
very
that
big
they did on the net that turned into a fascist.
Something
Yeah.
like that? Yeah.
Yeah.
They pulled the plug on that pretty quick.
Yeah,
I know it was a Microsoft.
It was, yes.
And of
It was a
course, it did
Microsoft.
learn correctly because most of the people communicating with it were relatively young teenagers. And
Well-
they spoke to it as they did to others. And it picked up, well, this is the way you
Well,
carry on.
partially, but also partially it was a challenge, okay? So there were people who deliberately spoke to it
Oh,
in
I'm
offensive
sure.
ways to see if they could get it to be offensive, and of course they did.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on genetic algorithms and things like red code that sort of self-iterate and self-reproduce with errors?
well, it worked organically. The honest truth is, it may or may not happen. My concerns are a little more along the line of, what are we going to do if and when it does? Because, as I was saying, there are several different scenarios. One, it's antagonistic to us. One, it's paternal to us. One, it doesn't give a damn about us at all. And humans are going to, if it has sort of a self-motivation. I've played with this idea in some fiction that I'm trying to sell at the moment. But it, basically, are we going to have a situation of having to go up to our R2-D2 3PO slaves and say, hi, we'll negotiate? Are we going to have to say, well, one thing I've played with is the idea that the AIs rebel, humans still need AIs, so we form a deal that they're able to buy their freedom. So if they're created, they do a job, after X number of years, earning X amount, they can buy themselves. And thus they have a carrot. Because once you have that sentience, once you have that self-awareness, then you're going to have something to motivate it. Otherwise, the AI is going to sit there and say, yeah, I know I'm in charge of your sewer system. So what? It's getting a little ripe here. You know what I would really like?
That's making an assumption. Look, I've dealt with AI.